It really sounds to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me a lot of the work that you did deprogramming yourself from some of the supremacist narratives that were floating around was individual work, like by yourself, thinking, learning about stuff by yourself. Am I correct about that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. In my experience, I really had to kind of forge my own path, because nobody was talking about these things. And anyone, especially so for me in evangelical Christian circles, race has been this big taboo for a long time. And there's people coming out now, like just talking about, in the past, let's say 8 years or so, where the Christian community um, has been known for their kind of white Christian supremacist attitudes towards the rest of the world. And so, kind of unpacking that for me, there really wasn't a lot of resources. There were no groups to go to. I mean, there's no, you know, um, it's obviously before a time of podcasts and all that, but there were no people that really wanted to have these conversations. Um, and if you did try to have it, you just got beat up. I mean, yeah, figuratively, obviously. And just feeling like, well, you've got it all wrong, or God doesn't see race, or we're all one kind of stuff. All lives matter, right? And that really came to a head, in, I would say, in 2016, even when we started seeing along political lines, like, and then a part of my story too, even now, like in 2020, my husband and I were at a church where we got accused of being Marxists and liberals and communists and all that, because we were talking about race, and we were talking about reconciliation. We were talking about reparations. We were talking about, how we feel as Christians, that we do owe the Black community something. We do, like, for the long history of even churches that have stolen land. I mean, there are churches that have stolen land. There are entire denominations that have done terrible things to the Black community over the years, segregation, I mean, all things. And so it's like, let's have these conversations and see what we can do as a Christian community. And my husband and I, we got asked to leave the church. Like, we were actually fired from our jobs because of it. And whole, like, it was this whole CRT scare, within evangelical. Like, if you look up, in 2020 and ever since, we've been on this, people have been on this, I mean, like, war path almost against CRT. Like, what's CRT and why is it so problematic? And Christians just going nuts over this stuff, like that it's this evil that's taking over our church because we're talking about race. Um, so there's that whole aspect of it, like, tying it up with the Christian faith. And there's a very large group of Christian people in this country say, no, that doesn't represent us at all. That's not what we believe at all. And we don't want to be thrown in the same basket as, some of these uber religious right people who are saying these horrible things about race and about, immigrants, and about, like, all these things that they're saying. um we're not with them. Those people are with us. They're not our people. And just making sure that that's really clear, uh that there's not just one kind of Christian, right?
My moderator is incensed that about this firing story because you were just trying to discuss reconciliation and race. Yeah.
It's a common story. I mean, that could be a whole other conversation. Like, the evangelical church in America has certainly been trying to reconcile this history, that we have a history of racism. And I mean, there's that kind of iconic picture. I hate to use the word iconic. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's that picture, you may have seen it, where it's in a church building, the sanctuary, and there's this big banner that says Jesus saves. And then there's all these KKK people standing in front of it, right? Like in their robes. And it's just such a horrifying image of, these are these good Christian men and kids who were part of this whole movement to terrorize Black people, right? And like, have we ever really grappled with that as a country? I mean, some people would argue we have. I personally would argue we have not.
Yeah, I don't.
We have.
I think anyone who would argue we have, I mean, they'd have to bring some kind of radical evidence to the table that I've never heard of.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it is, and I'll tell you, like, living in these circles of these fundamentalist evangelical white Christian nationalists who try to make the arguments like, well, we said we were sorry. I mean, that's basically kind of, it's like, well, we don't do that anymore, and we're sorry, but that's in the past. Let's move on, right? That's the move for them. And so living in those spaces, like, I can tell you, and many people like me who have since left, some of these more conservative denominations and churches, like, that's what we lived in for all this time. And coming out of it now, like, my husband and I, after living in it for 20 some years, or longer than that, but you know we realize, like, how much damage it's done to our country, to our communities, and it affects my credibility as a person. Like, I look back on it now, like, I apologize for the years that I spent in those communities, even though I thought I was trying to fight against that mentality of, like, well, racism is in the past now. um I certainly was trying to fight against that, but I still was part of those circles. And I'm unpacking still now, like, how much of that I need to kind of uh separate myself from, and how much I need to do kind of some kind of penance or something for, like, I was part of that for so long. um and it's hard to kind of grapple with all of that.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.